1,000 Lost Sons and Daughters, a mother's vengeance against the Galactic Empire. The massacre was swift, merciless, and absolute. 1,000 human children, taken from their homes, slaughtered in the name of imperial order. The Galactic Empire had decreed humanity a threat, a species too defiant, too resilient, too dangerous to be left unchecked. And so, they sent their enforcers to the colony of Aben Reach, a quiet outpost far from the Empire's core, where children played under twin suns and mothers sang lullabies of Earth. It took them less than an hour to burn it all to ash. And in that hour, they made a fatal mistake. They left one mother alive. Her name was Celine Voss. Once, she had been a strategist of the Terran Defense Fleet, a brilliant tactician who had retired to raise her twin daughters in peace. Now, she stood on the charred remains of Aben Reach, cradling the small, lifeless hand of her youngest. Something inside her snapped, an abyss of grief and rage swallowing the last remnants of the woman she had been. She did not weep. She did not scream. She planned. The Empire did not anticipate retribution. They never did. To them, humanity was scattered, broken. A minor nuisance in their grand dominion. But Celine knew their arrogance was a weakness, and she intended to exploit it. With the precision of a war machine, she gathered those who had suffered under the Empire's cruelty. Smugglers, mercenaries, rogue AI, and the few remnants of the Terran fleet who had survived past purges. In whispered circles and shadowed stations, a name began to spread across the void. Mother Vengeance. The first strike was subtle. Imperial supply chains collapsed overnight. Weapons went missing. Starships failed mid-flight, their life support mysteriously shutting down. Imperial officers were found dead in their chambers, the phrase, 1,000 lost sons and daughters, carved into their skin. Then the real war began. Mother Vengeance did not fight like an army. She fought like a ghost. Her fleet appeared from nowhere, striking at hyperlanes and shipyards, leaving devastation in their wake before vanishing into the black. The Empire sent legions to hunt her, but she was always 3 steps ahead. Every move they made, she had predicted, orchestrated their failures with a mind honed for war. And then, she set her sights on the core. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire had never known fear. He was a god among mortals, his word law, his dominion unshakable. But as he stood in his golden throne room, staring at the burning remains of his fleet outside his palace window, he felt something foreign creep into his heart. Terror. The palace defenses crumbled in minutes. His elite guards lay dead at their posts. And then, the doors opened, revealing a woman clad in battle-worn armor, her eyes 2 pools of ice-cold vengeance. "You took my children," Celine whispered, stepping forward as the Emperor stumbled back. "Now I take everything." He tried to beg, tried to offer her power, wealth, anything to spare him. But there was no mercy left in her. With a single shot, the reign of the Galactic Empire ended. And with it, the whispers of Mother Vengeance turned into legend. A mother who had lost everything, and took the stars in return. The night the Empire burned her children, the universe trembled. Admiral Lyrian Kale had surrendered her blade to peace. For a decade, she had set aside the weapons of war, raising her children on the distant colony of Veridion 9. The war had ended, and with it, she believed, the need for vengeance. But the Empire, in its blind cruelty, did not forget its grudges. A fleet of Imperial dreadnoughts descended upon Veridion 9, executing their decree with fire and steel. They called it a Preemptive measure, a final purge of human insurgency. No one was spared. Not her sons. Not her daughters. Not the thousands of innocents who had never raised a hand in war. When the smoke cleared, Veridion 9 was nothing more than an ashen grave. They thought Lyrian was among the dead. They were wrong. She emerged from the ruin of her home with only one purpose: retribution. A mother's love had turned into a blade, honed by grief sharper than any steel. The galaxy would bleed for what the Empire had done. The rise of the Crimson Vow. Lyrian did not return to the remnants of the human military. She did not seek the fractured alliances of politicians or the broken promises of diplomats. No, she turned to the forgotten, the pirates, the smugglers, the mercenaries who had long suffered beneath the Empire's heel. Her name became legend in the shadows. The Crimson Vow, they called her, for she had sworn an oath to spill Imperial blood until the stars themselves wept. She assembled a fleet from the scattered wreckage of rebellion, from those who had lost too much and had nothing left to fear. They struck first at the Empire's fringes, cutting down supply lines, obliterating outposts, slaughtering those who had obeyed the command to burn Veridion 9. But it was not enough. The Empire had not yet felt her pain. So she took the war to their heart. The fall of Imperium Prime. The Empire's capital world, Imperium Prime, had never seen war within its own walls. It had stood untouched for millennia, its rulers secure in the knowledge that no enemy could breach its defenses. They had not prepared for a mother's wrath. Through stolen clearance codes and silent betrayals, Lyrian's fleet descended upon the capital like a vengeful storm. The orbital defenses fell within hours, the once mighty Imperial Navy burned in the void. And then came the ground assault, relentless, merciless, righteous. The Emperor himself cowered in his palace as the Crimson Vow tore through his elite guards. When Lyrian stood before him, her blade dripping with the blood of his last defenders, he begged for mercy. She gave him the same mercy he had given her children. With one final stroke, she ended the reign of the Galactic Empire. The universe would remember this day not as a victory for humanity, nor as a political revolution. It would remember the fury of a mother who had lost everything. And it would never forget the name, Lyrian Kale, the Crimson Vow. The Galactic Empire believed it had crushed humanity's spirit. In a brutal show of force, they took 1,000 human lives, innocents, children, erasing entire bloodlines in one merciless strike. The massacre was meant to send a message, to remind all of humanity that resistance was futile. But what the Empire failed to understand was that grief could be forged into something far more dangerous than fear. One mother, a woman named Celine Voss, refused to be broken. Once a decorated military strategist, she had sworn to leave war behind, to raise her twin children in peace. But peace was a fragile thing under the Empire's rule. When the slaughter came, it did not discriminate. Her children, along with thousands of others, were wiped from existence in the span of hours. It was not just a loss, it was an unforgivable crime. Celine did not weep for long. Mourning was a luxury she could not afford. Instead, she did what she had once sworn never to do again. She picked up her weapons, donned her armor, and unleashed a war unlike any the Empire had seen before. She became a phantom of vengeance, striking where the Empire was weakest. With every high-ranking official that fell to her blade, with every warship sabotaged and sent plunging into the abyss of space, her legend grew. She did not command an army. She was the army. The galaxy whispered her name in fear and reverence. The Empire, in all its might, struggled to contain a single woman driven by a fury more relentless than time itself. Her wrath culminated in a single, earth-shaking assault. Using stolen codes and insider knowledge from defectors who had joined her cause, Selene infiltrated the Empire's throne world. The very heart of tyranny. Alone, she faced the Emperor and his most elite guards. They were the best the Empire had to offer, and yet, none could match the sheer force of a mother's grief turned rage. When the Emperor's lifeless body lay at her feet, the weight of her vengeance finally settled upon her shoulders. The war was not over, but the tides had shifted. The Empire had taken 1,000 sons and daughters, but in doing so, they had created a force they could not defeat. Selene Voss had become more than just a woman. She was retribution incarnate, and she would not stop until the Empire paid for every last drop of innocent blood spilled. The Galactic Empire never feared humanity. They considered them a lesser species, primitive, emotional, weak. That was their mistake. When the Empire raised the colony of Aerith Prime, they did not count the children. 1,000 young souls, burned away in the firestorms of orbital bombardment. It was another warning to humanity, another display of imperial might. But they overlooked one woman. General Helena Voss had given 30 years of her life to the Alliance of Free Worlds, fighting the Empire's tyranny across countless battlefields. She had seen comrades die, watched planets fall, but nothing could compare to the agony of losing her children. Her twin daughters, her only son, and the hundreds of other children she had sworn to protect as Aerith Prime's governor. The Empire thought her broken. Instead, they forged a monster. Within weeks, the first whispers of vengeance spread across the outer colonies. Imperial supply depots went up in flames, ships vanished into the void, and high-ranking officers were found executed, each body marked with a single phrase, "For the lost." Helena did not lead an army. She led a wrathful storm. Exiled soldiers, rogue mercenaries, bereaved parents, and battle-hardened veterans all flocked to her side. Every strike against the Empire grew bolder, more devastating. She did not negotiate. She did not show mercy. She did not stop. The Empire declared her a terrorist, a butcher, a war criminal. Helena did not care. When her forces crippled the Imperial shipyards at Orion 5, they realized she was no mere nuisance. When she executed Grand Moff Zareth, the man who had ordered Aerith Prime's destruction, they realized she would never stop. By the time Helena led her armada to the Empire's core worlds, entire fleets had defected to her cause. The Empress herself, desperate and cornered, sent envoys begging for peace. Helena gave them her answer: no peace. No surrender. No forgiveness. And when she finally stood in the imperial capital, watching its towers burn, she spoke the last words the Empress would ever hear. 1,000 children. 1,000 lives. And now, 1,000 flames to consume your empire. The empire fell that day, not to a grand armada or a political revolution, but to a mother who had lost everything. For 30 years, the empire had stolen from her. First, they came for her eldest son, conscripting him into their war machine. He was a bright, stubborn boy, full of fire. They sent back his ashes in a cold metal urn. Then they took her second child, her daughter, to the breeding chambers, genetic refinement for the emperor's so-called perfect lineage. The child she birthed was taken before she could hold it. She never saw her daughter again. One by one, they stole her family, her blood, her name. She was no longer Alara Vass, wife, mother, healer. She became the Hollow Mother. And when the Empire took her last son, she stopped mourning. She started killing. The thousand sons and daughters. Alara did not fight alone. The empire had done this to countless mothers, to thousands of families across the outer rim. She whispered to them in the shadows, spreading a promise: justice, retribution, vengeance. Her army grew in silence. Not soldiers, but survivors. Pilots whose siblings had been shot down for sport. Engineers whose children had been drafted into endless wars. Farmers whose daughters had been taken as imperial entertainers. They called themselves the Thousand Sons and Daughters, though they numbered far more. And at their head was the Hollow Mother, her heart a forge of unrelenting fury. The Vengeance War. The first attack was simple: a supply ship bound for the core worlds, redirected into a sun. Then a governor's transport exploded in orbit over his homeworld. Imperial war factories found their coolant lines severed, their reactors sabotaged. Each act of destruction bore the same message, etched in burning plasma across their wreckage. For the thousand lost, the Empire dismissed them at first: terrorists, criminals, mere nuisances. But when entire fleets vanished, when admirals were found dead in their beds with hollow recordings of weeping mothers playing in the darkness, they began to fear the Hollow Mother. The fall of the imperial bloodline. Alara did not seek peace. She did not want a treaty, nor a truce. She wanted the empire to end. Her final strike was the most daring: an infiltration of the imperial gene vaults, where the emperor's descendants were bred and raised in sterile perfection. There, Alara and her warriors unleashed the rage of 1,000 grieving families. They erased the genetic archives, burned the laboratories, and freed the captive children, children who had never known their true parents. When the emperor himself fled to his throne world, Alara was waiting. She walked into his citadel alone, unarmed, her hands stained with the blood of his lineage. The guards did not stop her. They feared her more than death itself. He begged. He offered power, riches, even false atonement. But she was a mother who had lost everything. And in her silence, he saw his end. When she emerged from the citadel, the emperor was dead, and the empire was crumbling. A universe without chains. Alara Vas did not claim a throne. She did not seek to rule. Her war was never for conquest, but for justice. With the empire shattered, she left the ruins behind. Some say she wandered the stars, searching for the children still lost to the void. Others believe she simply laid down her weapons and became a mother once more, not to blood, but to all those who remained. The 1,000 sons and daughters became a legend, a warning. The Galactic Empire had miscalculated. When they executed 1,000 human prisoners, men, women, and children, they believed it was merely another display of dominance. A warning to the outer colonies that rebellion would not be tolerated. But among the dead were the children of Commander Alina Voss. She had once been a decorated strategist of the human resistance, known for her cunning and ruthless efficiency. But when peace was declared, she laid down her weapons and settled into civilian life, raising her children away from the horrors of war. The Empire's massacre had stolen that life from her. For weeks, Alina grieved in silence. But grief turned into rage. And rage demanded vengeance. She re-emerged not as a mother, but as a weapon. Her contacts in the resistance provided her with resources, ships, weapons, and soldiers who still whispered her name with reverence. She gathered old allies, defectors, and even war-hardened mercenaries who had lost their own to the Empire's cruelty. Her campaign was brutal. Stealth attacks on military convoys. Assassinations of high-ranking officers. Explosions in imperial factories. The Empire had crushed her family, so she would tear theirs apart piece by piece. Whispers of the Mother of Vengeance spread like wildfire. The Empire dismissed her at first. One grieving woman, hardly a threat, until she led a daring assault on the Imperial prison ship Retribution and freed hundreds of captured rebels. Until she single-handedly executed the Imperial governor responsible for her children's deaths, leaving his body hanging in the capital city's square as a message. The Empire finally understood. They had not silenced humanity's spirit. They had reignited its fury. The Emperor himself placed a bounty on Alina's head, but every assassin sent after her ended up dead, their bodies returned with a single message. You took 1,000 of ours. I will take 10,000 of yours. Planet by planet, the Mother of Vengeance waged war. It was no longer just about her children. It was about every mother, father, brother, and sister who had suffered under the Empire's cruelty. The final battle came when Alina led a fleet of stolen warships into the Imperial heartland, targeting the capital itself. With the backing of thousands of rebels, she shattered the Imperial blockade and razed the palace to the ground. As the flames consumed the throne, the Emperor's last words were recorded for history. We should have let the children live. Alina Voss never stopped. Even after the Empire fell, she hunted those who had enabled its reign. Some say she disappeared into the stars, becoming a legend whispered in the dark corners of the universe. A tale of a mother's wrath, one that the stars would never forget. The Galactic Empire believed humanity would break. That when they raised the colony of New Terra and slaughtered 1,000 children, deemed insurgents by the Imperial decree, they would shatter humanity's will. They could not have been more wrong. Among the dead was the only son of General Cassandra Vale, a woman whose name would soon become legend. A tactician without equal, a warrior of unparalleled ferocity, and now, a mother with nothing left to lose. The moment she received the transmission confirming the massacre, Cassandra vanished from public view. Some thought grief had consumed her. Others assumed she had lost the will to fight. The truth, however, was far more terrifying. She was preparing for war. From the shattered remnants of resistance cells, she forged an army. From black market weapons dealers and rogue AI engineers, she built an arsenal. She studied the Empire's weaknesses with a meticulousness that bordered on obsession. For months, she operated in the shadows, and then, when the time was right, she struck. Her campaign was relentless. Silent assassinations of high-ranking officials. Precise, brutal strikes against supply lines. She turned the Empire's own tactics against them, sowing fear and discord among their ranks. What began as a whisper in the darkness grew into a roar of rebellion.